Warning, there will be spoilers for Before the Storm. Hello, and welcome to the Expanse. I'm Mitch the Quack, and I hope your day is less quack than mine. Today, we're going to be looking at the death of Calia Menathil and looking at who really got her killed. If you'd like to support the creation of this content, hit the subscribe button. If you like this content, hit the like button. And if you'd like to stay notified on the Quackery, hit the bell below, or you can follow me on Twitter. So, Calia Menathil was set up to die by the light. How do I figure that? Well, we'll start with where the manipulation began. Calia had just survived an attack on South Shore and lost her family. At this point, she is alone. By Calia's own admission, she says she was emotionally, physically, and mentally lost. And considering at this point, Calia had practically lost everything she held dear to her, from Lordrum to her own child, it's understandable as to why she was this way. At this time, Calia finds the now forsaken Alonsus Fowl, who in life held the title of Archbishop, the highest position in the Church of the Holy Light, and in death now holds the position of Bishop of Secrets. Fowl helped create the first human paladins and was the person who led the ceremony that saw Arthas Menathil become a paladin. Fowl's allegiance to the light, even in death, is something that is very hard to dispute. Fowl, in Calia's own words, helped her get through her darkest time and rekindled hope within her. This is where the manipulation begins. Because where Fowl does help Calia, unless Fowl is grossly ignorant on how people feel and act after a tragedy, then Fowl purposely helped Calia by getting her addicted to the light. What am I talking about? Well, firstly, we know Calia never told Fowl about her husband and child. To our knowledge, the only person Calia confided that information to was Anduin. That's kind of strange considering the amount of time Calia and Fowl had been together. Had Fowl never asked? Or had Calia never told him? Had Calia trusted Fowl enough to tell him? Secondly, on the note of her family, ever since Calia survived the Scourge, she continued to have terrible nightmares. She still dreamed of what happened to her and her family. Fundamentally, this torment Calia experienced proved she never reconciled what happened to her, and until the day she died, she was most likely still haunted by her past. Now, with everything I just said, unless Calia was lying, the question instantly becomes, how did Fowl bring Calia back from being emotionally, physically, and mentally lost, but not address the underlying scars that troubled Calia? The answer is, Fowl used the light, or, for the IRL equivalent, painkillers. Lots and lots of painkillers. One of the closest IRL equivalents to the light is medication, specifically painkillers. There are so many references in Before the Storm of the light easing those who should feel anything but pain-free, it's ridiculous. Here are just a few examples.
The sense of peace that stole over Anduin as he entered the Netherlight Temple was balm to a spirit still wounded from Valera's news regarding Bane. He smiled softly to himself, and once again marveled at the light's ability to comfort. Calia felt S'Ara's warmth brush her like the stroke of a feather. Sleep now, brave one. No more battles, no more horrors for you. Only peace and rest. A golden glow filled the area. No explosion of blinding illumination, but a gentle radiance that made Anduin's tight chest loosen as he inhaled deeply. He had been awake all night, both unable and unwilling to sleep, but as he closed his eyes and opened to the healing energy, he felt renewed, refreshed, and calm.
And I just want to remind you, these are a few examples. The light relieves pain with very little effort required on the part of the recipient. All the person has to do is be in proximity of the light, and the light's power should relieve them. This ease of relief is exactly how many people get addicted to all forms of drugs, in particularly painkillers, as their drug of choice eventually becomes their crutch when dealing with pain. Slowly, the medication replaces any form of tolerance or will to withstand pain, and in the case of Calia, I'm almost certain that is what occurred. Fowl exposed Calia to the light, dampening her pain enough so she could operate with some semblance of normalcy, but never got Calia to truly address her pain and torment, which in turn made her an addict of the light. And the joke is, at this point, it's not actually that bad, because you can easily argue Calia had reached a point where she was unreachable and completely gone, and what Fowl did was give her a way to retain some semblance of normalcy. But because things like this are never that innocent, let's move on to the thing I didn't mention. The thing I haven't mentioned yet, which is also a staple of the light, is that this comfort the light gives is not free. Calia had to become a priest to gain the favour of the light. And where I know that doesn't sound that bad, here's the flat IRL context surrounding Calia. Calia was a broken person who was then found by the leader of a cult, who then proceeded to induct her into the ranks of said cult, while also making her an addict to a certain painkiller this cult controls. The cult leader being Alonzo's Fowl, and the cult being the Church of the Holy Light. And once again, we haven't even reached the bad part yet, because up until this point, Calia hasn't been forced to do anything which could be considered unsavory. That was until the reveal of Sahara, who in this cult is basically a divine being, and in short sets Calia up to die. How do I figure that? Well, what we need to look at is the prophecy Sahara tells Calia.
There are things you must do before that peace will be granted to you. Things that you must understand, that you must integrate into yourself. People who need your help. What one needs in order to heal will always come one's way, but sometimes it is hard to recognize it. Sometimes the most beautiful and important gifts come wrapped in pain and blood.
Now, this prophecy is not only strange, but also very vague, in pretty much all facets except one. That facet being the underlying implication that when this prophecy is fulfilled, Calia will find peace. Calia, as I mentioned before, is still feeling the torment of what happened to her, and she is using the light to deal with it. But, like all drugs, your body should start to gain a dependence and/or resistance to the effects. So, the offer of peace for Calia is always going to be enticing, as the light's effects would have started to fade with every use. But the ugly joke about this, as you can probably already tell, Sahara isn't offering peace. As in, I will help you face your torment so you don't need the light anymore. Instead, as we find out later in the book, Sahara is offering what can only be described as a more potent form of the light, a more potent form of Kelly's painkiller. So basically, think of Sahara's prophecy as a dealer saying to a user, I'll give you the purest form of whatever you want. You just need to do one thing for me. Now, as you can tell, there is always a catch with such an offer. And the catch for Calia was that she dies. But I know the instant response to this is, how does Sahara's prophecy do that? It's not exactly like Calia has been told to do anything. And you'd be right, she hasn't been told to do anything. But that's where the vagueness of this prophecy comes in. Calia has no clue as to what she is supposed to do for this prophecy, but with the introduction of the prophecy to begin with and the offer of giving her peace, she instantly starts to think about how the prophecy could apply to her. And this is where the really tricky manipulation comes into play. Because what has Calia been doing for a large portion of time since she's been missing? What has been influencing her for at least 10 plus years now? The answer is Alonzo's Fowl and the priesthood. So I'll ask you now, if you were a part of a church for a relatively long time, basically doing nothing else but your priestly duties, after you had lost everything, and you are given an extremely vague offer that will give you something you truly desire, what are you instantly going to think about? The answer is you're going to fall back on what you know and apply the offer to your life. And that is precisely what Calia does. Literally, 2 sentences after Calia is given the prophecy, she's approached by another priest, who is a part of this cult, I might add, and Calia has a revelation of what she has to do to fulfill the Naru's prophecy, while doing what she always does. This apparent revelation only occurs because of the Naru's prophecy. What would be a normal act for Calia turns into something profound. And from finding this apparent meaning in the norm, things start to go downhill really fast. As this prophecy just happens to be given a few chapters in regards to in lore time, I think literally the night of, and when deciding to set up the meeting between the Desolate Council and their human families. And in the same chapter, you get Sylvanas receiving the request from Anduin for this unprecedented meeting to occur. For me, coincidence at this point is bailing out. But to keep things straight, what I've been getting at is Calia was conditioned and basically drugged by Alonso's Fowl after she was broken by the events that happened to her. The reason he did this was so when Sahara gave Calia the prophecy, she would want the prophecy to occur due to the pain she had never reconciled, and think in a certain manner that would see her want to be on the field in Arathi. From here, the prophecy plays one final role, and that role is getting Calia killed, because as it is described in the field just before she reveals herself, Calia thinks of the prophecy and thinks,
was this the moment she had been thinking of ever since she had found her way to the Netherlight Temple and Archbishop Fowl? So much had fallen into place so perfectly. The desolate council, Anduin's noble call for this gathering, and now, spontaneously, human and Forsaken had taken a step so courageous that Calia felt both inspired and ashamed.
And she even states,
and I pray to the light that has sent me here this day that you will understand.
If you've ever wondered why someone would make such a monumental and arrogant choice in the situation Calia was in, now you know. Calia's conditioning, addiction, and Sahara's prophecy got her killed. But I also know two questions come to mind. A, didn't the Naru that got Calia killed bring Calia back? And B, why would the Light spend too many years setting this up? The answer to the first question is no. Sahara did not bring Calia back. This is what the Naru says before Calia is raised.
There will be no more battles for her now. Calia Menathil will be freed from the pains of the living, from the nightmares that once rent her heart. She understood that those on the field were her people, and she accepted that responsibility by giving her life to try to save them. Not human, as they were when she was young, but Forsaken, as they were in that moment. Light and dark, Forsaken priest and human priest. Together, you shall bring her back as the light and she herself would have her be.
And I just want to add, a paragraph later, the last part, the most important part of that speech is repeated.
Bring her back as the light and she herself would have her be.
Just to clarify, that statement is literally saying they are not bringing Calia back. What Anduin and Fowl bring back are the parts of Calia she herself and the light want. That's it. They don't bring back her nightmares, or whatever else both do not want to see within her. Basically, what the light does is dissect Calia's spirit for what they want, stick it back into her body, and call it Calia. I mean, I just want you to quickly imagine if someone took away your fears, doubts, anger, anything you constituted as bad about yourself, and then ask yourself, are you still the same person by the end of that process? Because I'm under the impression you are your hope and fear, your joy in pain. As the original Edgelord himself put it, I am my scars. I am my experiences. You, as a person, are your experiences, good and bad. And what's even worse about this, I might add, is I don't think Calia had much say in what came back. Because, as I mentioned before, Calia had basically been going through years of conditioning. As I also mentioned before, the prophecy Calia was given had her have a revelation that pushed her to want to go to Arathi. That revelation was the idea that she could help the Forsaken by being their leader, and that one day she could rule her people. But what I need to make absolutely clear is that this change in ideals seems to come from Sahara's prophecy, and Calia searching for meaning within it. And so Sahara's prophecy was also a primer for when Calia was resurrected, as is well documented that depending on how a spirit passes on, affects how they may return. And as Calia was thinking strongly about the prophecy and how she could save her people, whilst also having her light addiction and conditioning from the years prior, Basically, she ends up being the perfect candidate for creating a light-bound undead, because the light was raising a person that had the ideals it wanted. The proof of this is shown in Calia's reasoning behind how she felt when she first met Val. It's stated she identified with Val and the Forsaken because it gave her hope of meeting her husband and child again. After she's been raised from the dead, it's stated,
"Ever since I met Archbishop Val, I had believed that one day, if I had the chance, I could show that even though I was not forsaken, I could treat them as my people and rule them well. My brother had tried to destroy them. I wanted to help them."
It is a stark contradiction that is made here, and unless Calia was initially lying, which is possible, what the light brought back is Calia's desire to be a benevolent ruler, specifically her desire to rule. But what they did not bring back was Calia Menathil. And lastly, to answer the why would the light spend so much time setting up one person? Why would the light go out of their way to do everything I mentioned? The answer is, the light is like the void. The void sees multiple futures and plans centuries in advance with that knowledge, all with the express purpose of taking control of the universe. The light is pretty much the same. It sees one future and plans centuries in advance with the knowledge of that future and tries to make that future occur. The light's goal being the exact same as the void's, the eventual conquering of the universe. In the light's vision of the future, I think Calia plays a big role, hence why Sahara told her the prophecy to begin with. But what I also think is that future expressly needed Calia to die in a certain manner and under certain circumstances, hence why the year's worth of addiction and conditioning was put in place. So, when the time was right, Calia would accept the prophecy and get herself killed. What specific role Calia will play in the light's future? I don't know. I mean, there is the possibility the light's been searching for a perfect vessel that would not fall to the void, and the semi-lobotomized state of the undead provides the perfect means because the undead can innately be missing certain emotions. But there's also the fact Calia's basically been turned into an avatar of the light and now she wishes to rule as queen, which is a very interesting trait considering the lower of kings, Razan, who seem to embody pride, just happens to have died during BFA. Overall though, Light's goal is still unknown. But if I'm to say anything about this situation, if it's accurate, the void is very, very bad. We know this firsthand. But the light is honestly just disgusting. I mean, using people's hope to control the universe, that's some pretty nasty stuff. I mean, the void is the worst of the two, but at the very least it has the courtesy of using fear and despair, not a person's goodwill. But, with all that said, do you think this is plausible or possible? Leave a comment. The best speculation is always done with the community. If you prefer to talk about your lore though, I usually hang out in the Shinies and Lucydos Discord, and even if I'm not there, the small community that usually is, it's amazing to talk lore, speculation, or anything World of Warcraft with. But until next time, have a nice day!